All right. Well, welcome to another edition of Nostr News. Here we are, July 13th.
July 13th. Welcome. Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah.
I'm excited. We're obviously not physically cohabitating in the same space. I'm glad we can make it work virtually.
Yeah, likewise. Are you, I'm trying to remember all of the travel. Are you in San Francisco right now?
I'm in San Francisco right now. I have a trip upcoming next week, though. And then some travel in August as well. So busy couple weeks coming up, but still in the Bay for now.
Cool.
And you're in the mountains, no?
Yeah, we're in the mountains. We're up in Mammoth Lakes. We've been for, a week and change now. So we got to do the fourth here, and it's kind of crazy because everything's so much snow everywhere we go. We ride our bikes up, and the ski lodge, there's people skiing mid-July now in 80-degree weather. There's still enough snow, so wow. It's been a little bizarre.
Does that mean you can actually ski still?
Yeah. People go up and ski every morning at 6 or 7 a.m.
So that's like the best of all worlds because it's warm for hikes and swims and stuff. But you can still
Everybody's wearing shorts up there, and they hang out in their car, they get everything out, they just look like they're going to the beach, but instead of a surfboard it's a snowboard.
It's crazy. Weird times.
Yeah. So but I'm glad that we're getting to get back together, because I feel like you have again curated a great list of everything going on, and I feel like I'm woefully underprepared. So I'm going to use this session to learn everything I should know about everything going on, because there's so much.
Well, there is a lot going on for sure. I mean, I feel like there's never a dull day in Nostr, and it's been accelerating. Caveat, I'm still catching up on a lot of this stuff, and so part of my hope is some of the things I can throw out there will just be able to use as a starting point for some of the conversation, and particularly some that overlaps with AI. But yeah, man, I don't know, where do we even begin? I think, there's two big things happening. One, which I didn't put on the list, we should, the elephant in the room. Did we already talk about the whole Apple Pay with Damas last time?
We haven't. No,
we haven't talked about that.
At least it's, with Apple Pay and the removal and stuff of the feature. I don't think we've talked about any of that stuff. That's all newer than about 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. And so, I don't know. Maybe that's just one place to begin. What is your, initial take on all that? I initially, I think we discussed this a little bit last week. I was very nervous that, Apple could be in many ways more of a choke point than just about anything else. Mm-hmm. It seems though, my personal usage of zapping has obviously gone way down using Gamma still. Although that may change, at least for the short term with Primal. But that eventually will run into the same issues. And I'm noticing fewer zaps, but I'm still noticing a decent amount. What has your experience been like? Are you still noticing people zapping or not as much?
Yeah, I would say not as much. So I'm guessing that the Apple hammer has affected, at least as far as I can tell. I still send Lightning payments, but I send them to the person, and I haven't really integrated note level zapping via Apple Pay yet into my workflow, kind of in my daily habits. And I'm always very experimental, trying lots of clients, playing around. Obviously we've been playing with, like you were mentioning, Primal with the test flight and getting just sort of a flavor of that experience. But I don't think, at least actually less likely, I don't want to misrepresent it, but I don't think there's is there yet Lightning Zap set the note level linked in there, or that's not part of it?
I have not gotten that to work yet, but I think it's theoretically possible. So I'm not sure if that's just in the next release or if I was missing something, but it should be if it's not, hopefully by the time this is out or very soon thereafter. Right.
So I think definitely not having it in a main client really impacts my use of zaps. And I don't think Apple has any really near-term reason to change course on this or change the stance. So I think it's kind of better for us to collectively think about how we can accomplish the goals of Nostr and the different sort of styles of how to build and how to use Lightning, independent of maybe the support that Apple, may or may not give and what the timing on that will be. Yeah, I think there's plenty of interesting stuff to be built, and even stuff around Lightning. Maybe it just makes sense to do it more web centric. I don't know. What do you think?
I think web centric, the Android stuff, the PWAs, all that we talked about last time. I have not experimented with Apple Pay yet. So for those who haven't heard, Zapple Pay is a project of Ben Carmen. The guy he's one of those super prolific devs who's releasing constantly. And the gist of it is you're able, at least to my understanding, is that I think it hooks in with Nostr Wallet Connect, and you can basically configure it so that when you give a, Hang 10 or Shaka in Damus, or I'm assuming whatever, like in whatever client, you're then able to record that as a trigger on another server that basically sends a lightning payment from your other node. And so in theory, it's pretty interesting because it's a bit of a Rube Goldberg machine and kind of a nice hack to get around. And I haven't played with it yet, but it does seem like people are using it. I doubt that's going to go mainstream, but it is a pretty nice, workaround for at least the very heavy power users for now.
Right. Well, I mean, it does have this nice property that it removes the kind of need to have specific client support because it's more like at the note level, right? So instead of it being a feature on a note that lets you send a zap to that note or to the owner or creator of that note, you create a new note, and like you said, like a Shaka, or I think you can configure different types of ways to express it, but that new note with a special signal that you encode, which is just a Shaka, kind of serves that same purpose. And that to me seems nice because you could imagine that fitting into lots of different experiences and like kind of leaves for a lot more experimentation. It may actually push the experiences to, to help people think about wallets and kind of communication networks as different things. Yeah. So, there might be some good in there.
How cool would it be if this does kind of just end up making, the ability, it could be like a weird way that payments come into every app, where a weird roundabout way. I'm still not sure how it would kind of go mainstream. It seems like a pain today, but maybe the experience gets so much better that in whatever app you create, whatever Nostr app, you just enter your InPub and your, whoever is running your Lightning wallet for you, if you're running your own grade or if it's Albi or whoever. And maybe it'll become easier and easier for them to set it up for you.
Yeah. I'm hoping that we'll just see more of this kind of experimentation. I think it's healthy to just try everything in all kinds of different directions and
little blimps.
Yeah. Though I still think, and I've had a lot of discussions over the last couple weeks, and I still think a lot of people are, I'd say in a little bit of a optimization of experiences mode versus more radical experimentation. So I think we as Nostr curious or interested people, I think are spending a lot of time trying to say how do we get zaps back in, or how do we polish this experience that we know is going to be thwarted by some of the App Store type stuff. Doesn't mean it's not worth trying to figure out workarounds and ways to make that work. But I think the single most important thing is there crazy demand for an experience where people can get zaps. And if we solve that, all the hoop jumping and behavior change and all the friction kind of doesn't matter because it'll work anyway. I think we were maybe you and I were on a call chatting about this with some other people, if I remember. But I think the most important thing is demand. The use case that creates insatiable demand for that. And I don't think it's necessarily mostly an optimization thing. I think we can make optimizations on that, but the thing that really drives it is we need the story of the person who made something awesome, and then everybody rallied around that awesome thing creator and sent them value in whatever way they could. And then that creator walks away and says, wow, I couldn't have done this anywhere else,
So I can see right now, this happening in one of two ways. And I agree with you. My bias as an investor as well is I want to see people trying, to your point, the radical new experiments that just straight up couldn't be done without Nostr. And the really wildest ideas, and that seems completely crazy today, is probably the thing that's going to be huge in 5 years. And so the two things that I would love to see, people experimenting on are kind of in two different categories. One is exactly what you're saying. I think this actually is not that crazy. It's pretty direct, which is how can you find a medium-sized content creator, whether it's a musician, an artist, whoever, and literally whatever hand-holding it takes, get them onboarded and just show them, hey, you've made, if someone's not making a ton, whatever, you're making $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month on YouTube today. and we can double that for you on Nostr. Mm-hmm. And if that happens, that first use case, people they'll, as you said, jump through hoops. They'll tell their audience how to download whatever Albi on the web, or download whatever on Android, or downloads Apple Pay even. If it is the difference between them, making an extra $100,000 or not, they'll do it.
Right.
And so I want to see that happen. I don't know who's going to be the first one. And, I think that's very worthwhile. And we need tools, by the way, like, Primal, which we'll talk about, that just came out with their release today, that just make it ridiculously fast and easy for a normie that just doesn't want to, experiment with anything. They just want to, like, one click, download, works, it's fast, it's easy, I get money, what. So I'm excited about that. Maybe it will be the Primal team, who knows? Maybe it'll be, Wavelake or a music team or a Fountain podcast. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But one of those content creators. And then the second thing, I think this is kind of a nice segue into what I was most excited to talk about today, is the brand new use cases. And I think that, of all the different use cases out there, the thing that's exciting me the most right now is definitely Pablo and Highlighter, but not just Highlighter. We've talked a lot about Highlighter, and this is a brand new experience of, you can highlight a piece of text, people can comment on it. But now he has this data vending machine thing. Have you been following this?
I've seen some of the notes about it, but why don't you set it up and we can dig in from there?
Super fucking cool. So I think this is like a broader segue into like Lightning payments and Nostr sort of messaging for AIs, which is what I've been thinking the most about. It seems to be the moment right now in the world. But in general, the idea behind the data vending machine, as Pablo calls it, is, I think he has this general thesis. I think maybe he and Gigi have been talking about this, which I tend to agree with in the long term. In the short term, I'm not sure if it's like 100% right. I think it might be like sort of 50-50, but in the long run, I agree with him, which is data will more or less be free. Information will more or less be free, but computation or manipulation of data to get new data will not be free. And I think that makes a ton of sense for a lot of reasons. Computation always has real world costs around electricity, the actual physical hardware to perform the computation. And so what he basically, his thesis here is, okay, so let's basically create, in a way, a marketplace for data, but a marketplace for, really it's more a marketplace for computation and then whatever data that comes out of that. And so, the first use case that he's doing is really, in my mind, super cool, and it links directly with Highlighter. And it's a feature I think both of us have been pushing, sort of for different things on this podcast and with him. I think he's kind of combined two of our requests. One of my requests was AI, paying AIs over Nostr via Lightning. And then your request forever has been, I want to post in a podcast and get a transcription.
Yep.
And he's doing it. And so this data vending machine, the first kind of like test case he's demoed, and if you guys watching this haven't seen it yet, check out the YouTube video. It's like a 3-minute demo. Basically is, he post in a random YouTube link or a podcast link. It says, I want a transcription. I'm willing to pay up to 1,000 sats. And then on the back end, there's kind of a marketplace, and different people can compete to offer you that transcript at different prices. And it could be humans. It could be someone running a Whisper model, which is an open source machine learning model for transcription on their own cluster, or whatever. Like, people can compete to give that to you. And over time, they can accrue reputation. And so you can see how, as you accrue reputation, maybe you're able to raise your prices. He has what he calls the undercutter bot, which is the new entrant that's willing to do it just for super cheap, but you don't know how good he is yet. Anyways, and I just think that is badass because it's showing. And again, I think eventually that experience needs to be much easier for consumers. They don't even need to know what's going on in the back end. But this just shows you the power of Nostr, which is the power of Nostr combined with Lightning and AI. You're allowing people to compete to perform whatever kind of services in the world, increasingly which will be done by models. And it's all open, free market, reputation based. That sort of thing is I think that's what's going to make the next giant wave of Nostr adoption happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I think, I'm excited about, overall Bitcoin as a, computational payment mechanism, because you can do it, such small payments and fast, and you don't need to have a lot of, computers don't always have bank accounts set up. So, that style of being able to just sort of more loosely federate and contribute to a goal that somebody has and something that, people want to pay for. I think that's an exciting one. There's so many questions in how you train it, who runs the infrastructure, how much does it cost and should it cost? And are people flipping and changing kind of who the providers are? Is that the main leverage in getting kind of a system like this deployed today. I think for some of the image gen stuff, it feels like it's the kind of thing that's like kind of fun in the right way that people kind of can play with it. Some of the language stuff I think requires a little bit more of like an application view to what the application should do. And, I think there's still so many questions going on around that people are just like, okay, outsource it to some expensive backend, but like focus on this user experience. So I almost feel like we may need to see a user experience pop in, in like an LLM context where it's sort of a direct paid, and then the kind of more open, loosely federated version of that kind of equivalent thing would, we sort of identify user demand through kind of outsourcing to a centralized provider. And then once we have that demand, we can build the apps that let us kind of do the looser federation and the competitive, bidding across the ecosystem of, people willing to contribute, data and compute resources.
So this is an interesting point. I want to talk more about sort of Lightning and Nostr and AI having its mode, because there's a lot more to cover there. But actually, I want to jump straight into a couple of tweets that you flagged for me around sort of what in the edge or open source AI world is going to win versus the centralized world. And, what I understand what you're saying now is like, okay, let the centralized providers like ChatGPT show the demand, and then the decentralized providers can come up and sort of compete against that. Now, I guess my big question is, there's a couple of reasons that quote unquote decentralized or federated providers could win. One could be they're cheaper. One could be that they're uncensorable or just open, truly open. Another could be that they allow people that otherwise couldn't access it to access it. For example, if you don't have a credit card, you can't use ChatGPT, but through Lightning, someone in Africa or India could use it, or something else. Before we jump into those tweets, what is your best hunch on like why the federated serving system will work? Is it just going to be cheaper, better, more open, more accessible?
Yeah, I mean, this all comes down to this, kind of broad question that we've been weighing a lot and talking to a lot of people, which is like, is centralized? Centralized has efficiencies. Centralized, you can pile up a bunch of resources to accomplish things quickly, but there's a limit to how broad it can go with traction. And so I always think of like centralized as a good way to prove out an experience, let somebody try to show us in a way how to like move the world forward in a way. And then once we know that like people want this and we know there's demand there, see if we can sort of build the pieces that let that be more flexible and inclusive and allow more experimentation along the frontiers of what's unknown. Yeah, so I think we're still like with a lot of the AI stuff, there's a lot of really cool demos, and there's a lot of, interesting kind of experiences that people are playing with, and I think there's some habits being built around those. Like I don't know if you played with character AI, or if you've seen the stats on that, but just like,
is it exploding?
Insane stats. I think it's like, I don't know, 100 million visitors or more. And it's like, 28-minute total visit, average visitor time or something like that. So I think there's something, it touches a nerve there, but like, is that the final experience? Is there another iteration of the experience? So today, I think it's hard to do that kind of experimentation in a decentralized way. It's easier to have a, kind of a group of people who are investing for the future with an expectation of an outcome to just sort of amass the resources to run those kinds of experiments that are really expensive to run. But I think if that proves to be a style of usage that has habits around it, that, I think then you could sort of say, well, take that and build the decentralized version, and maybe you compete on price, maybe you compete on, censorship. One of the things, the NSFW competitors to character AI have really been having a moment. I think it's Janitor AI and Chai are two of those, which are kind of the NSFW. I don't know if they're probably not NSFW exclusive, but I think they are supportive of that, which has given them a lot of traction. So, I'm a fan of trying more stuff, but I think sometimes it's hard to, accrue enough resources for some of these things that have, expensive early development. I don't just mean like a few developers, spending all their time, but I mean, there's the people side of it, but there's the compute side of it and data acquisition and that stuff can get very expensive. And so I think it's hard to, both do that in a decentralized way and explore the frontier of what the experiences should be. So I think it's more like, sort of let people accrue a bunch of resources together, get them all in one place, figure some of that stuff out, and then we can actually take some of those learnings and use it to sort of expand in new directions, which is, I think kind of the Twitter, Nostr story, in a sense, I don't think you could have done any of this stuff 15 plus years ago as Twitter was getting started. It was very expensive to deliver SMS, which was how Twitter originally ran, right? It was all SMS, no website. So it was like a huge cost, and there were people willing to bear that cost because there was this, exciting future of what could be done. And now we're sort of living in that future, and maybe for some of us not so exciting, but now it's easier to understand how to, like, we have a lot of experimentation, and we've started to build tools to show how this kind of experience could be decentralized.
So I agree with all of that. I also think, though, just kind of going through this live, I do think cost could be a big factor, and we should talk more about that thesis. But that one I'm not 100% sold on, but I can see it. The more I think about it, the more I'm sold the reason that something like this sort of quote unquote decentralized version will probably win is for the same reason that Nostr is going to win. Like the censorship resistance or allowing things like NSFW are great, and like sure that's going to be part of it. But that's not like the big thing. The big thing, as with Nostr, is the composability and the openness. And people to run lots of little
100%
experiments. So I think what's going to happen here with the OpenAI experiment, the actually OpenAI experiments, is, and the reason that some of this data vending machine stuff and, using, again, open networks like Nostr and Lightning, Bitcoin below that to operate it, or it's going to allow people to like experiment a lot more like super kind of strange, but highly personalized and specialized models. So right now, if you think about something like ChatGPT or whatever, any of these like big models that people are releasing, they're great, but like they're not super specialized on anything. And you will have private companies that are going to come up and try and do like specific enterprise applications or specific consumer applications. But again, that means they're going to have to like bring, some proprietary data of some kind, or compete on some other advantage. And, there's only going to be so many of those that get funded, even if the funding wave is crazy. Now in Nostr land, though, it's beautiful because in Nostr land, because everything is open, you can take any of these open source models, access any of the data that's open on Nostr or proprietary data that you're able to bring in. And I think what you're going to see is basically, and I think, so I should have mentioned this already earlier. I think it's a pretty big deal. There's a big hackathon, which I'm sponsoring through HiveMind Ventures. And that's the AI for All hackathon, which Fetty and Stack and Bolt Fun and some other guys are throwing. Cody Lowe's kind of been pushing the playing point on that. And some of the projects that are developing, they're really cool. Pablo, of course, is part of the project because always. But then there's also this guy, Ollie the Dead, that's doing really cool. It's like a marketplace for agents. And I think something like that could be massive. And the reason is, if you allow anyone in the world to mash up their own data with whatever data they can find with Nostr data and just say, okay, cool, if you have whatever, a random GPU, you can run this model and like give us a highly specialized use case. And so one example, imagine, I think Pablo gave this example, you have like a dentist, and that dentist has a lot of like special knowledge or whatever, and they're able to create their own little weird dental thing. And that's never going to be huge, but if you look at that in a long tail, there's 1,000 and then eventually 1 million and then 1 trillion of these like hyper specialized models that can just operate with each other openly, send out the data they create, other models can use it, play with it. And obviously those people need to get paid somehow, right? So that's where the Lightning piece comes in. If they're actually running their own model with their own electricity. So I think that's what's going to make this pop. And so, I've been thinking about this a lot in the context of, Ellen Bits, which is a company, an open source project when they spun up a company that I invested in. And, the thesis there has always kind of been a little bit like WordPress in the same way that, WordPress just makes it super easy with their huge developer ecosystem to ship whatever kind of little widgets or whatever you want. It's this beautiful long tail and lots of people that are specialists in helping you set up a WordPress. I think it's going to be kind of like that with these AI agents in Nostr land, where You're going to have lots of specialists that can help lots of people train their own models on open source. They're going to expose it and offer it via Nostr, because then they can offer it to these open marketplaces. They're going to get paid via Lightning and then settle in whatever currency they want in their own country. But it's all because it's all open. And so, yeah, the more I think about this, the more we talk through it, the thing that I'm most excited about is this marketplace for specialized agents that just takes advantage of like the super long tail of like weird knowledge and data that people have.
Right. And do you think these agents are going to be open source? Like, because if there's a marketplace of these agents, it kind of suggests there's, marketplace sounds like commerce, and commerce sounds like there's, somebody owning something proprietary that they're going to sell. Otherwise, if it's kind of open source software, open source data, probably the marketplace idea doesn't work. So what do you think is that the right way to assess it, or is it purely open source but still has kind of a marketplace dynamic to it?
Well, so I'm not sure. I think there's a couple ways it could play, but like I think there can still, even if everything is open source, there's always a marketplace element, which is just someone has to host and run the model, right? And so even if all the data is open source and you still need to do some transformation with that data, someone needs to pay for the inference. And so, it could just be like a marketplace that just basically goes to the cost of compute, which is going to be pretty close to zero, but still not zero. So that's one option. But my guess is it's going to be a mashup, right? It's going to be, you're going to have some specialized data, either like specialized knowledge. Like imagine you're an enterprise, or the dentist example, which is kind of a silly example, but going back to dental coin, right? And you've got like some specialized understanding, or you have very, maybe perhaps unorthodox views of like the way a surgery should be done or whatever. And, you want to ship like a better example, let's say you're a physical therapist and there's a treatment style that you recommend that other people don't necessarily agree with, but you're an expert in that. So someone, the kind of like long tail WordPress guy for Nostr helps you train a model, and the foundation model is open source, but it's fine tuned with your data, which is proprietary. And so people access your model, it's available on an open marketplace via Nostr, and you pay with sats. But the model itself is still run on your hardware, and it's mashed up with your proprietary data. And then maybe you make a choice on the data that you output. Is that open to everyone? Is that proprietary? And I think you'll just see people try different things.
Yeah, I think the good news, that I've kind of become, I feel like I've become aware of some conversations where there's a lot more questions these days around do the hyperscale investments that have been made in large language models actually make sense, or are those going to get commoditized, and are these more like fine-tuned, distilled, local edge, models that actually require, less data, fewer computing resources, that suggest that this kind of thing is here. And actually, coinciding with that, I feel like agents are having a bit of a moment now, right? Everybody wants to talk agents. Yeah. And so kind of the combinations of, there was a bunch of work and capital and effort put into that, which got us to today's point, but maybe you don't need as much, as much strength and resources as were maybe originally assumed, depending on what kinds of applications end up taking off. And when I look at the applications, I think, I follow less like what is interesting in the consumer world of kind of generative AI, like not to say nothing is interesting there, but it's just not really where my head is. But the stuff that I think is the most interesting is kind of the whole software development kind of framework of how do we design software and develop it and test it and deploy it and monitor it. Like all of that stuff, I think, is up to get reimagined and reinvented. It could actually use some of these primitives of like, the kind of real-time calls to a bunch of different services to find out, who can provide the service with the best quality and the best price. So I think there's potential, there's still costs to running this stuff, but I'm interested in like, how does it plug into these workflows? Because there's so much radical transformation happening at the like software development process. And I almost feel like anything you believe about software development is up for reinvention. And it doesn't mean VS Code with Copilot. Like, sure, that's cool. I get it. That's like very useful. It's impressive, the results. But I think, how do test cases get written, and how do you, review kind of maybe product requirements or bug lists, or how do you sort of take all of the stuff that happens around software development and integrate it into the new world that may actually not use as much of the existing tools or infrastructure deployment. All of that stuff is up for reinvention right now, say like purely AI-based code gen reinvention. And so, those are, I think, going to happen. There's already a lot of people working on those and making good progress at those. And there's real results today. We don't have to like hold our breath and imagine too much. There's actually like real results.
Okay, so that's a very provocative claim. Can you maybe give like two specific examples? One, a specific example of like what you're saying right now, like a real world example for that's happening. It's substantially changing software development. And two, what would be an example of like, imagine 5 years out or 10 years out, whatever, like when you say the whole world of software development has radically changed, like paint me a picture of what that looks like.
Well, I mean, think about not just the coding part of software development. You can open up VI or Emacs or VS Code or whatever, but like the whole process of like, what should be built is a question you first have to ask, like, what should be built? So where do you start? You're talking to a customer, or you're talking to a user, or you're doing a whiteboard, making some block diagrams, and you're kind of trying to figure out like, what should be built? Well, there's maybe ways to, analyze and understand that, ask those questions, categorize them, prioritize them, way upstream of coding, right? To try to start to design a system, or even just a simple experience, just to start with. And then there's, today you could imagine, today the way this works is you kind of like, you open up VS Code and maybe you have, if you want a specific example, a lot of people who spend a lot of time in VS Code use Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and they come up with easier ways to pull in code snippets that they otherwise would have Googled for, or, look on Stack Overflow or.
Oh, yeah.
So like, I think that is already massively impacting the software development process, but we don't yet have people who don't know how to use VS Code getting a lot of benefit out of being able to say, hey, I wish I had a thing that did X.
Got it.
And so like right now we're sort of like taking existing workflows and like patching in code gen and AI related things into existing workflows.
Gotcha.
But like, that's not the be all end all. That's like a, interim step to see how much is useful and where can we find utility.
So for example, just like very simple, you're saying, maybe 10 years out, just like verbal language is way more common than what we're thinking of as more abstract or computer code today. Like you're able to just literally like those who can describe in natural language more succinctly and beautifully what they want, maybe the better programmers, or is that?
Well, yeah, I think I think it depends on what layers and areas we get efficiencies in. But like, so you run a venture capital firm called HiveMind, and I'm sure is it hivemind.vc is your website? Mm-hmm. Let's say that you got you got invited on a podcast to talk about HiveMind, and you wanted to link the episode to your web, from your website to that episode. Like, how would you do that? You have to open up, like, do you manage the website yourself, or you have a firm or a friend?
No, I do.
Okay. So you have to like open up a file on the server wherever you host it, and you have to log in. You have SSH keys or whatever. Oh, okay. So you're using WordPress. Okay. So you don't have, maybe you trade off some configurability and design for kind of the simplicity, right? Yeah. But you can imagine more easily, you just have like some sort of like a voice assistant. You're like, hey, I've got a file over here that's, this new podcast I was on. Can you just like find that podcast? It was episode of this thing, whatever. And just make like a link at the top and have it go, link out. And also there's a YouTube video. So also make that link and make the design familiar to people. So if other WordPress websites or others have this kind of format, just do that. And then you don't ever open up VI or Emacs or anything. You just, or WordPress even doesn't need to really support this. It's just like you go from like an idea to live software by expressing the idea well.
So, this is fascinating for many reasons. It opens up many, many different avenues. One is, I'm curious if your thinking has changed on this, because I remember maybe a few months ago, we talked about this on a podcast, and I asked about this idea, like in the future is all programming based on verbal, is everything just done verbally? And you're like, well, maybe some stuff is, but you're still pretty bullish on like the physical, whatever interaction. Have you changed your mind on that, or you think just both, or?
Well, I guess it depends on like what layer we're talking about. Like we're talking about you, I guess you're sort of representing yourself as a WordPress user and not as a programmer.
Right.
But I think a WordPress user like you who's not committing to the programming craft can get, let's say 100 times more configurability than WordPress is ever going to bother to implement, with their programming staff, right?
Yep. And then meanwhile, people that are programmers, what would be an example for them? Like VS Code or Copilot is already, I'm hearing from many people, increases their productivity 50% already.
Yeah.
What do you think that workflow looks like for, a really good engineer 5 years out?
I think we're just constantly increasing the abstraction layer, which means anybody who's committed to the craft can just accomplish a whole lot more than they could before.
Yeah.
And, you go from, if you have to flip bits and electrons versus you get to write assembly language, you're like, oh, this is so much easier. I only have to write these sort of vaguely human readable things. I don't have to mess around flipping, electrons anymore. Well, okay, today VS Code, if you're programming in Python or something, or probably Rust if you're like really smart. What's that?
Or hipster, I feel like that.
Yeah,
Rust
hipster. Yeah.
Hipster programming.
But if you're programming that, you're so far removed from the electrons, you probably can figure out the path. Like you could, like somebody who really understands the layers of the architecture could do that. But we are not yet imagining what that other layer of abstraction would look like.
Right.
Imagine how far Python or Rust is from the electrons.
Right.
And now AI is going to take you 50,000 feet above where you are today, and you're going to look down on Rust and be like, yeah, we used to touch that. We know how it works, but that's not where the challenges are.
And I think it's a really interesting point. So I guess back to your point around the opportunity here, on the one hand, and I guess it's a debate a lot of people have. It's like, well, companies like the Googles and the Microsofts or whatever are in a nice position because they already own all the customers. They already have all this data. If they're able to move quickly, then they can sort of launch the new tools and use their existing distribution and data source. On the other hand, I also really like this idea that like, if what you're saying is as radical as it probably will be, the little version we're seeing right now, just like rebuilding, the horse-driven car before the actual internal combustion engine. Like, there's probably a huge window for just, it probably will be brand new companies if it's radically different. Unless there's leadership at these big companies that's willing to just completely cannibalize their business, which that's generally not what happens.
Yeah, well, I think the big companies today are pretty savvy about finding places where there are well understood scaled opportunity and going after them. So they're not quite as as lumbering and dumb as some people suggest. But I do think I think everybody is always trying to recreate the past in a new way, right? And so, I think everybody's like, oh, ChatGPT may be a new search engine. It's like, okay. I don't think you're going to catch Google unaware of the interestingness of large language models and transformers because they were literally invented there in 2017, right? Yeah. So that is, I think, unlikely. If it's just an information retrieval search-based thing with a slightly different chat UI, I don't think that's meaningfully something that a Google would miss. If there's something you can do better recommendations for follow or friend stuff, that stuff that, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whoever should probably just be able to figure out how to use language in new ways to make better recommendations like that. So I think that is going to just extend the dominance of the existing players. And so I think there's lots of opportunity for new stuff, but I think it's going to look very different. It's going to take the assumptions about the world and it's going to radically reshape them because what's possible, there's new stuff possible that just you couldn't do before. And we've never had a system where you could say, I want a website that does a different thing like this. and then the website's deployed. Like we don't have, like, so who owns that? Does GitHub, Microsoft own that? Does OpenAI own that? Does Google? Like, I don't think anybody owns that. It's just nobody. Like maybe a Webflow would be well positioned for such a thing, or a Squarespace, but.
Well, okay, so a couple of the other wild ideas that came to mind when you were speaking is, you know, I've been sharing. This one's a bit more esoteric, let's say, but I've been sharing some of this Thinking Aloud show, which is a really fascinating show.
Thinking Loud.
Thinking Aloud. So
Thinking Aloud.
ALLOWED, but some of them a double entendre. Also Thinking Aloud.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I shared one with, I mean, it's, let's say, more of the like, kind of like, edge explorers of reality anyway, and like what's possible. And so one of them is Terrence McKenna, who's kind of like the successor to Timothy Leary and sort of the psychonaut and whatnot. Anyways, and you know, I don't know if it was the one that I showed, but in many of his different talks, you know, he always talks about, he has this fundamental sort of belief that the universe itself, the basis of the universe, is made of language. And not to go too out there, but he talks about, in some of his interdimensional travels, seeing beings that can literally speak something into existence, like create from the vibration of sound, a physical manifestation of it. And that immediately comes to mind to me with what you're talking about here, is that in a way we're continuing, you know, if that's true, real, or whatever, moving in that direction for more and more people to give them, I mean, you know, as Arthur C. Clarke would call it, magic, right? Which is indistinguishable from science or engineering. So I love this idea that, you know, 8 billion people maybe now are going to be able just to speak into existence whatever ideas and creative things they have in mind. And, you know, that should spark a renaissance is all I can think.
I think so, because you're putting the tools in the hands of more people. Now, we're nowhere near it today. It's not like we're very close to this future, right? Like, but I think it's we're heading there. We're directionally moving in that direction. And, you know, if first it's going to be the actual craft person, practitioner types who are doing it every day. You know, they are using VS Code, and they're now able to perform not just 50% better, but 10x better, more complicated tasks that they can do in shorter amount of time, because we have all these technology tools that just like abstract away all the, you know, the places where you screw up and shoot yourself in the foot, and it just kind of, you know, understands what you want and helps you do the thing, and then you kind of do some tweaking, right? So I think step one is just like enable people who are the craftspeople of the art to do it and to create better in that way. But along the way, you also say you're bringing up the other 8 billion people who don't know the craft, but who can now do these like superpower light type things, right? So I think there's still going to be like abstraction layer and the need for craftspeople. I don't think that ever really goes away. I mean, I'm not going to say ever, but like, you know, if you think about just energy and stuff, like maybe that matters. But I don't think it ever really goes away as long as there are human needs that are unmet.
Which is infinite, probably so.
Yeah. That's the only thing that can really kill Bitcoin, is if we have all human needs are met, then nobody really wants Bitcoin, right?
Time to pack it up, guys.
Pack it up.
And to be clear, I mean, so I agree with you. I think, you know, if anything, I mean, I don't agree with him on everything, obviously a lot of the crypto stuff, but I did love Mark Andreessen's essay on AI saving the world. I'm not going to say save the world, but I generally agree with him. Like every technological new wave, you know, there's a lot of people that scream, all the jobs are going to go. And then all that ends up happening is more jobs come, because now there's like more people that can do a bunch of things. I think it's going to be the case with software. Good engineers become great engineers become whatever, wizards, and all kinds of cool things happen. But the thing that I'm even more excited about is, to your point, there's going to be all kinds of craftsmen that can benefit from this. Software is one example, and it's nice because it has a big multiplier effect. But one thing that I'm super excited for, and I've been waiting for this for years, and now I feel like it's finally here, is, you know, as a musician, right? Like, I cannot wait, and we're super close to this. I actually think this will happen pretty fast. You can already kind of play with it on some of Google's models, where I'm like, okay, I want to create a new album. I want to do it with an AI. In fact, I probably should do this. Maybe should do one of my projects later this year. And I want, you know, here are my 10 favorite beat makers. Here's like the mood I want. I want you to create me 20 beats in this style. And that's it. And now all of a sudden I can rap on those. And my producer was an AI. And that, to me, that's magic, right? Like that's something I would desperately want.
Have you played, I know there was a startup called Riffage, Riffage.com that kind of, I think it went viral back in December, if I recall. And it plays with this idea a bit. And then, if I recall correctly, I think in the last few weeks, I think Meta launched something new in in a kind of a music based, kind of a directable music based model, which is maybe a little bit more like a beat maker, like a digital audio workstation driven by, kind of AI.
Cool.
Kind of a new experience around that.
Yeah, and by the way, I would love to see. I know that Rock at Stemster has been doing some really cool stuff. I'm playing with that. I would love, right now, like they have beat makers and rappers and other people starting to play with it. I would love for, maybe he'll integrate AI agents on there as well. And maybe using Pablo's data vending machine. And again, this goes back to our earlier question of like why the Nostr open protocol matters, and it matters because it increases the rate of experimentation.
100%. Yeah, I think the censorship resistance is an enabler of more experimentation, more diverse paths of attempts. Let's talk a little bit. I don't know if you have any more thoughts to add because you touched on it before, but like, are you sort of a believer in PWAs, or are you kind of like a skeptic, or where do you sort of live on that?
To be honest, I don't have too many new thoughts here. We talked a little bit about this last week, and I would just say that I think it's a valuable tool in the toolbox. I think it will grow in relative importance, and yet I still don't think it's going to be a big deal for a while. So
you're kind of, it's like more experimental.
Let's say 1% of people use PWAs. It's probably less than that. Let's say it's 0.1%. I think it could grow 100x magnitude, maybe even get to 10% one day. Like all the Nostrages and people that are, freedom and Bitcoiners, and that's great. Do I see, people that are just going to the App Store and like clicking and like don't think a lot about a lot of things? No. At least today. I'm not saying that can't change, but I think the key is it's about changing user behavior. So one of two things either happen. It needs to either be so easy that I don't even know. It's just, and I know some people have suggested to us that now it's already come a much longer way, and like they can show you in a little video how to click it. But I think the one thing that can make it really pop is if by going PWA, you're able to access some content you really want that you can't get otherwise. You're able to make a lot more money than you could otherwise. So if everyone's like, hey, all you have to do is change your user behavior from clicking the App Store, and you click this one button on a website, it's not that hard. And by being able to do that, you can see whatever the new Seth Rogen movie that he's doing direct to consumer, and that's the only way you can get it. People will do it.
Right. So actually, speaking of that, then, I mean, it kind of, to me, it sounds like again, kind of a content, like there's some piece of content that's locked that you want to see. And I think like recruiting external content that already has a fan base and stuff is like, interesting, but feels to me like it might be challenging in ways that are like if the audience isn't there, why does the creator come? And you can't really promise, monetary incentives unless the audience is there. So there's like, obviously some chicken and egg thing, but I think what I was going to point out is this. Did you see this documentary, this Nostr documentary that was produced at Nostrica?
I heard about it. I haven't watched it
yet. Yeah, it's really, really well done. Really? I can say this as I'm kind of like a very amateur at video production. I don't really know what I'm doing.
DK is way better than he's letting on. Yes.
But I look at this and I'm like, wow, this is actually, maybe it's like the first like really professionally produced piece of media. It's about 25 minutes, I think. And he grabbed a lot of footage that I think he recorded live in Costa Rica at Nostrica. And then he sort of pieced it together, and the transitions, the intros, the outros, the whole narrative arc of the thing. It's like, this is a filmmaker. This is somebody who really, knew what he was doing and wanted to do a great job at this.
Craftsman.
Yeah, craftsman. Yeah. And so, yeah, maybe I'll get an LLM that'll let me rise to that level. But I think something like that would be interesting to try in a content store, because like what if it was just on, does Stemster support video today?
I don't think so. I think they're audio only, and I think it's still in like closed beta, so I think it's like that.
But like, what if you had a filmmaker like that do a crowdfunding campaign to even make the film, or do like a little bit of a sizzle trailer reel kind of thing? What was it?
I like, keep going. I thought of something I want to show you, but keep going.
So, and then maybe host it on Nostr, and you have to throw in, 100 sats or 1,000 sats or, 10,000 sats, whatever, to be able to unlock the content, but you do it with a really high quality piece of content that's not like recruiting people from outside, but that's actually kind of like somebody who's already on the inside and who's creating content that we, the people on the inside, want to see flourish and want to sort of run this experiment.
So I love all of that. And the reason I got so excited is, I don't know if you've seen this, Danny from Deezy just released, I think it was today or yesterday. I haven't gone all the way on it yet, but he released Astral Desert, the first open source ordinal mosaic, which is interesting. Now, again, I'm not, whatever, the NFTs and inscriptions and like to move on, whatever. But the concept here is fascinating. And the concept is he basically repurposes all of the Astral Babes and Astral Chats and recreates these completely new pictures. And so it's like a mosaic, right? Like you have a new picture of all the other pictures. Now, one of the ideas that, I know it's kind of implicit in this is like, imagine, you have some kind of like open, like you have some sort of piece of art, but this is all done open source. Now imagine there was a new way. I think it comes back to somehow incentivizing creators where it's like, okay, I have this, or like we talk about the models. I have this specific piece of art, this specific piece of data, that for whatever reason people find valuable, even if anyone can copy it, it's my inscription, whatever. And I'm willing to quote unquote license that or share some of my proprietary, whatever information, ideas, knowledge, skills. And in doing so, we together create a brand new piece of art that, it's 1,000 of us from the Nostr community, and we all, load up our InPub and our Lightning address, and one day it'll just be one. And we get a SATS flow from that. And so I think that's really cool because like for something like the documentary, it's again, the value for value split. Same thing, you and other people are doing with podcasts, but you can do with anything like music, art, and this open source ability to collaborate, bring new people together, potentially fund it, some of the crowdfunding stuff, and then also split those revenues. That is a brand new activity that will get people, if they can make real money doing this, they will get very excited.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think those kinds of things are what are newly possible. I always keep trying to think or figure out what's the simplest version, because I think that feels like the coordination of getting everybody to contribute and opt in and participate and decide shares. Those are like more sort of advanced kind of versions of this that are like beautiful in their sophistication and complexity. But I think like we need some very simple starting points. Like I would encourage almost everybody who's thinking about this is how do we sort of slim down the complexity in favor of simplifying UX so that everybody understands I show up, I do a thing, I pay, I get paid, I create a certain way. And then once we have those flywheels of like, hey, I just know I can show up every day and make this thing and I'm going to, or I can play the slot machine and try to, create a great, a fun video that people value. And then once that flywheel's going, I think you can start to now you can actually do splits across a couple of creators or across, dozens or hundreds.
So I agree with that. I'm pulling up another tweet. So I think the value for value, like the thing for podcasts is probably the easiest and best example today. I think that'll work really well for music too, because it's just so simple. It's like, hey, there's two guests, there's a host and a guest, and there's a producer. Split it 30, and then 10% left to the whatever podcast index or whatever it is. I don't know if you saw this, but this is another idea I'm really excited about. And this, in a way, kind of transitions us. I want to talk about Lightning Labs and the L402 announcement, which ties back into some of the AI stuff. But I just saw it this morning from Albie, and I've talked to the Albie team quite a lot, but like I didn't even know about this, so I was crazy excited. And so they're apparently this was on YouTube. I don't know if it's live yet. It was this morning. But how to earn for your code libraries and support fellow contributors. Tune in for a live session about value for value split payments for NPM packages. Now, this is something that I've wanted for a long time, and I was just so excited to see this. I remember back when I was, investing my prior fund, I looked heavily at this guy who was trying to figure out how to basically monetize like packages, like small little pieces of open source software. And there's a ton of these packages, and there's like dependencies, and like some of them really big and some of them really small, but like that's what the internet and like everything runs on. And, if you're programming, there's this NPM, which is kind of like, I don't know, like a directory or collective of all the stuff. And that's how you download all these different packages. And, his whole point was that a lot of these packages are making major companies like Adobe and Google and whatever run. But the people that are maintaining the open source packages are not like monetized. They're not incentivized in any way, shape, or form. They're not monetized. And it's like often these people burn out and like have like pretty like horrible lives and stuff like that. And so his whole thing is how do we like get these guys paid? And at the time, this was before I realized how big Lightning was going to be. His idea was to do it through just telemetry, like basically tracking, which now I view as like pretty creepy, but it was an idea. And the idea was basically just like give stats back to the user. Basically like, hey, like here's the person or like Adobe is one of the, the people that downloaded your package. Like you should like basically like spam them for an SLA or something, or like for some kind of support agreement. But then as I started reflecting on it and understood Lightning better, I was just like, oh my God, like you should just be able to post your package and maybe multiple people's packages and maybe people that package things together and do the value for value splits and just be like, okay, here's my software I wrote. Here's what cost stacks. Right? And this goes back to the L402 thing. So Lightning Labs, for those that missed it, this was a really big announcement, kind of part of this AI and Bitcoin and having its zeitgeist moment. They released this week two things. They released LangChain Bitcoin, which is basically a library that plugs into the very popular LangChain, which is also a library for like AI agents, how to collaborate with each other, how to bring in external data sources, how to chain multiple agents together. And then Lightning Labs, I can even feel myself talking fast. I'm so excited. I feel like we're speaking. And then Lightning Labs, so they released the tools to combine sort of Lightning and Bitcoin payments with LangChain agents. And then they released the newest version of Aperture. And Aperture is basically like the API wrapper, which allows you to basically charge sats to access an API endpoint. And there's like many ways you can do that.
If you're hosting your own API, you can use Aperture to sort of wrap it in a sats-based kind of payment interface.
That's right. And I don't know all the different specs, but I think you can do it like per call, per amount of data transferred, certainly per call. Anyways, and so this all used to be part of what they were calling the LSAT protocol, and they changed it to what I think is a much better name, the L402 protocol. Which is excellent because it references 402 error, which is payment not request or payment not found, an early error on the web, even earlier than 404. And so I just think it's like cool on many, many levels. But now the challenge that I'm seeing from the AI hackathon and all this stuff is, okay, so you have these tools, but like eventually we can see a world where everyone's, okay, you want to access either my agent, which is compute, or my data, and I'm open to either and or both being monetized. Probably more bullish on the agents in the future. But how do you get started? It's kind of a chicken and egg problem. No one's going to do it if no one else is doing it. And so, a couple of people, Cody just put out like an easy abstraction where you can take any API. I forget the name of it. It's called Matador. Cody Lowe, the guy that's running this hackathon. It's called Matador. And you can basically take, if you have like an OpenAI key, you can basically just take your key, enter your Lightning address, and offer that up and get paid. And like basically it's payment gating, and it's using L402 in the background. And OpenAI API is what he's doing today, but you could eventually do it for anything. And now what Albi is doing, I think this is one of the things that could really blow up. If you're a software developer and you write some really useful code and you just say, hey, the only way I'm going to let you access this is to pay me 100 Satoshis, that gets pretty interesting. And so anyways, I think we're all looking for what is that first L402 wrapper use case going to be. I think this is a very interesting experiment that could be it.
Yep. And so are people today mostly using it for like I guess like early demos that people are doing, which wrap kind of existing APIs from like maybe OpenAI? Are there is there a list or is there a catalog we can go to browse things that can be used that way? Or
it's so early that doesn't even exist yet.
Okay. So it sounds like a tweet storm you should write.
It does sound like a tweet storm. Yeah, actually.
A Nostr storm you should note.
Yeah. Or someone listening to this should, or you should.
Well, I think it's nice to get both because there's a lot of AI people on Twitter who are not on Nostr.
But by the way, DK, I mean that's why I'm so bullish and excited. Like I don't know if this is going to be the hackathon to end all hackathons. I mean it's whatever, it's relatively small, but by the end of this hackathon, we should at least have some what we need are very specific use cases, right? You go and you talk to, the AI developers, say they're not deep in the Lightning or Bitcoin. We're like, okay, this sounds cool, but like, how do I use it, right? And so what we need are just very specific use cases and easy libraries for people to plug in. Well, now we got the libraries. And so now we just need some really dumb, simple demos for people to get in, oh, okay, now I see how I can wrap what I'm working on. And also to start building those network effects, because once you build sort of a network of AI agents that are calling this data and using it, then more people obviously becomes more valuable to join that network, blah, blah, blah. And so my hope is that by the end of this hackathon, and our demo day is going to be on August 3rd, that we at least have a few very legitimate, interesting demos of this working in the wild.
Right. And demo, if people haven't built something yet, is there still time to do that?
Absolutely. I mean, you've got, several weeks, like 3 weeks left, right? So I would say,
do you have to apply to present your demo, or just how does that work?
That's a good question. Actually, I don't even know. I think I'm supposed to judge, so I'm not sure all the rules. Probably should know. But I mean, I think at this point, it's very inclusive. They're not trying to like gatekeep from anyone. So if you're interested, go to bolt.fun. And then they have a tab on their website. Bolt.fun guys, by the way, they always do incredible work for these hackathons. They always have the best content, the best programming. Like they're truly, truly exceptional for what they're doing. And there's an AI for all tab. That's this hackathon. Just go there. All the information's there. And you can watch in real time. They encourage people to build in public and share updates, share code as they ship it. It's trying, like, the idea is to be very open. And there is like, there's, I think, something like $15,000 in prizes up for grabs. So it's cool.
Nice.
But the bigger point behind it is build an open, show people that this works.
And August 3rd is in person as well as virtual, right?
I believe that's the case.
Kind of a hybrid.
Taking the lead on all this, but my understanding is, that you don't obviously have to be there in person, but the actual judging, I think it's going to be at Craft here in SF, and should be pretty cool.
You said at Craft? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So it's like kind of a setup with a stage audience kind of setup. People show up.
Truly, I don't know.
I'm asking you all the
we'll find out. Yeah, Cody, if you're listening to this, or John's, like, let me know. But I'm planning to be there. But
yeah, awesome. I think I have it in my calendar. I think you sent me a calendar invite. So
we would love to have you there too.
I'm planning to be there if there's a there to be.
But all that said, just looping back, I love this idea of packages. Like someone that writes an interesting tiny bit of open source software, and it doesn't need to be expensive. Like literally, it could be like 100 sats or 1,000 sats, or whatever. But it's not zero. And I think that could be a really compelling use case. And honestly, it also makes me super excited because I know there are a lot of these. Like I think that if this starts to work, there's a broader picture which we've been talking about for months, which is this can, in the same way that you were to talk about how like excited you are that LLMs can radically change the way software development is done. I think this is every bit as big of a deal, if not bigger. Like. The moment, because this makes open source feasible for so many more people. Because the moment there's that whole book, I don't know if you read a couple years back, it was from Stripe Press. I think it was Nadia Egbal's book on like how open source software gets made and funded. I didn't read all of it, but I thought it was pretty good. And like, I remember my big takeaway was like, man, like a lot of these open source devs are just like eating ramen forever, and like it sucks. And not all, there are exceptions that go out there and raise companies, but if they don't have kind of the business gene or person with them, like a lot of these dudes that are geniuses and really kind of like holding up the weight of the web are not remunerated. It's kind of sad. It's actually really sad. And so one of my dreams from this is in the same way that all craftsmen and artists in the world, including the software developers, are able to earn a healthy or even like excellent living by just providing, by taking a small cut of the value they're providing. I think if that happens, then open source development is going to just go like this.
Right. I'm excited for it. So we got the hackathon going. We got Lightning, LN 402. We've got NPM wrapped in Lightning.
Agents wrapped in Lightning.
I actually have a topic that I wanted to talk about that I thought we had in our notes, but I can't find it out, but that's all right. I guess I have maybe I'll offer my provocative take.
Oh yeah, let's go.
I think that I've been using Threads, which just launched about a week ago.
I'm sorry, DK. I think my dog is barking. I gotta go. I keyed.
The provocative take is I think it is good for decentralization to have Threads be successful.
Okay.
And I'll start with that and see if you want to bring the knives out or if you sort of get where I'm going with that.
So I think I get where you're going with that. I want to hear the whole argument. High level, I don't really, I was kind of joking with you. Zuckerberg's never been my dude. If anything, I have my own hot takes I want to mention on social media, which I think are even more broad. And that's just like all social media, including Nostr right now, is probably not healthy for me. But specifically on this, like, I don't use Instagram. I don't plan on using Instagram. I'm not going to use Threads. I also don't hate it. And if it's a step in the right direction, cool. So
I have not been a fan of Facebook. So, I will reveal my I'm skeptical about most of the choices they make, just because I don't think it generally makes the internet better. So I kind of start from a skeptical perspective. But I do think that Twitter has, really fumbled the ball here and created an opening for something else to, fill a bit of the void that it's creating. And I'm happy to see, I think Threads was able to pull it off so far. We'll have to see where it goes. But I think it's a step in the right direction for, roughly two reasons. One is, I think it shows that, Twitter is not a single monopoly, but that there is opportunity for more places for more people to gather in different ways. So I think it's better to have two than to have one. And then I also think their commitment to, apparent commitment, let's say, but I'll grant them that I think it would be hard to back out of this commitment, is they seem to, all of the language says they want to be compatible with the, Fediverse, right? And they want to be a proper Fediverse client and kind of let identities and relationship graphs travel around wherever. So, I think I mentioned, I think I wrote something and mentioned, while I don't spend a lot of time with Fediverse, Mastodon stuff, like it, I think it's, it's still team more open, let's say. and there's people like, who's the guy who's doing the bridge? He's I think he works on Truth Social.
Alex Gleason guy?
Yeah, exactly. So Alex, I think he works on Truth Social full time, which is a Mastodon instance, if I recall or understand correctly. But I think he's been working on bridges to help Nostr and the Fediverse or ActivityPub or Mastodon integrate better. And so, in a sense, I think I'd say, like, again, to summarize it, there's sort of the two things. There's one is, Twitter is not the only place. And I think, Threads is exploiting that, moment of weakness that Twitter is really having to sort of take it in a new direction. So I think it's good to show that people can transition and there's more than one player here. And then, something with a commitment to Fediverse related stuff is probably just one hop away from Nostr. And I think Nostr, I think Nostr is still like a much better architecture for all this than anything I've seen from, the Fediverse stuff or, say Blue Sky or something. So I think there's a lot of different approaches, and I'm glad to see a lot of different approaches. I still, I feel like Nostr's the approach that I find most compelling. But if a lot of the Nostr community, I'd say is almost like, so focused on the ideology of decentralization that it's sometimes harder to use the products. And I think that, I think that Threads is not super focused on decentralization at all, really, but they have kind of like some marketing message, and presumably, because they were rushing to get it out, they couldn't build those pieces. I trust that they will be doing something, or let's say I expect they will be doing something, and I think it'll be hard for them to, totally go back on that commitment. So, so I kind of find it a step in a good direction, despite me not loving, the company and the way they operate and the impact on the internet and the fact that it is yet another centralized platform. I think it has more net good for the goals of, the kind of shared goals of Nostr, I think, than it has negativity.
Yeah, I don't use Threads, or I haven't used it yet, but I've seen it used by other people. And look, I think, so I 100% buy your argument that it's better to have two places together versus one, because now that's kind of cracked a little bit the monopoly and has opened up the possibility for people to gather somewhere else. I think it's interesting, like what I've noticed from people talking about Threads is that they seem to like it because they feel like it feels more like text messaging, and thus they can be more kind of like personal with one another. I will say a general comment is, from what I can also gather, there's probably a reason you follow someone on Instagram versus on Twitter. Like, you may not want to hear someone's thoughts on whatever on the visual platform versus vice versa. And so I'm curious how that kind of holds up over time. I guess for me, the first question is, and I'm not an expert on the Fediverse or Mastodon or those other protocols. My understanding is that whoever controls that instance can, still whatever, shut you down if they want to. And my also understanding is that it's quite difficult to bring your identity and social graph from one instance to another. And I don't know all the details of that. So I should go and do more of my homework there. If you truly can eject your identity and bring it somewhere else with you, and it's not like some, whatever, you have to, send a smoke signal to whatever, 600 Delaware.
Right, yeah.
Then that's cool. And I applaud that. But my hunch from people that I generally respect and trust on this sort of centralization versus decentralization is that that's not the case with any of these activity or Fediverse instances. So I don't have.
I think that is how. I mean, the big knock that people make on Fediverse stuff is that instead of having like one centralized ruler who doesn't actually care much about censoring you, you actually have these little fiefdoms, and you're much closer to the person who's in control of that instance. So I think that's a very reasonable knock to have, and that's kind of why it's never really been that appealing to me. But I do think that, if you have portability out of threads into that format, I can't imagine that you cannot port to other formats. The question is, can you port to even one format? Maybe it's not the format we believe in, but can you port is kind of a bigger question.
I don't have the answer to that. I would love to know. And if someone is listening, they can give us more information. And maybe this Alex Gleason guy, like if there was a way one day to be able to port from Fediverse to Nostr, like, that would be super cool. And I would applaud that. My understanding is that that's not possible yet, but maybe it could be, and I'd be interested to learn. I will kind of zoom out though and say something kind of broader, which is I think while all this stuff is interesting, it's kind of missing the broader point for me, which gets back to something we talked about before and you always say, which is that it's not the decentralization that matters, it's the openness of experimentation. So the thing I'll keep coming back to on this is like, I think it's good, to your point, that you're breaking the monopoly. I think it's good that Zuckerberg is at least getting the decentralized ideas in people's heads. Now, the way that Nostr wins is never going to be, okay, we're just like a better Twitter client. It's just never going to win that way. The way it's going to win is by having all kinds of other use cases, the marketplaces, the AI plugins, the new data sources, and watching that compounding effect. Oh, I can plug in, my Twitter profile into Spotify. I mean, the truth is for me, and I'll get into my hot take, I don't like social media. Like, honestly, I was thinking about this the other day. Even Nostr is a huge step in the right direction, right? Because at least there, I know how much I am or am not being manipulated to a degree. I know what the algo is or whatever. I can always change the algo. But the reality is, like, I have had Twitter for a while, but I didn't really use it that much until around COVID. And I was talking to a friend about this last night, and, I do try and curate a good feed of very interesting people, and I get a lot of value from Twitter, I'm not going to lie. But once I started using it, obviously it's wrapped in with COVID, so it's hard to, like, break all these different variables out. But I became a lot more paranoid and like just anxious in general, I would say, for sure. Yeah. And, I had stopped using Facebook. I was never using Instagram. I generally just tried to avoid, social media in general because I kind of, and I even tried for a while to get rid of my phone, which I think was a great idea. I know this is extreme. Everyone's going to do this. But I will say for me, like just like distraction and scrolling is like, has probably been a net negative on my life. And like, I look at back when I was in high school and I used to use Facebook, and then when I just got off of it, like I would say like my general just kind of like happiness and presentness went up. Right. And the only social media I use today is Twitter and now Nostr. And again, I do get a lot of value from Twitter, so I'm not discounting that. And I guess the fact that I keep using it means I probably, maybe I'm wrong, maybe my net value is higher, or maybe I'm just addicted. But yeah, I don't, that's not what excites me about any of this with Nostr. I think this is a cool first use case, but I'm going to be so much more excited for like, okay, now I can log into the music player and zap my favorite music players. We're so much more excited when, okay, I'm going to talk to my personal AI agent that's living on Nostr as well. And he or she or it or whatever is going to go out there and give me, a Mad Lib or Dilla style beat that I love and help me record a song and do cool stuff, like creating stuff. So anyway, I guess my hot take is like, I just don't really like social media in general. I think Nostr is by far the best because at least the brainwashing is a bit less, when you know a bit more of like how the brainwashing is happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think.
Well, is there a better structure? So I'll give you the team social media, kind of team Nostr view. Is I think there, especially in kind of these text-based formats. I don't really spend a lot of time in kind of like photo-based formats, but across like Twitter, Nostr, now a bit on Threads, but I spend a lot of time on text-based formats because it doesn't make me anxious in the way you describe it, but I feel like I am able to synthesize information from a lot of different sources and hear perspectives that I may not otherwise be exposed to. And so it kind of helps me keep in touch with kind of a collective thinking in the world and different perspectives on a idea that I'm sort of interested to hear more people's experiences with. And so, is there a way to keep that good part of it without kind of the mind control or the kind of like the...
Well, okay. So first of all, I think I have a lot of thoughts on this. And I think the first thing I'll say is there is no one answer, right? Like everyone is different. Everyone has a different limbic system, a different, whatever, like style of processing information in the world. And I will say one thing that I do love about Nostr and even the Nostr Twitter coincide is I think there's another idea that's really been stuck in my head, which is from going back to Timothy Leary and Robert Anton Wilson, actually, this idea that we all live in various reality times. And I think one of the most important things to grasp, and something I spent actually a lot of time talking with Pablo about is, and maybe this is a controversial view, but I don't believe there's anything such thing as objective reality or an objective point of view. I think that's impossible. And I actually think this is a much longer conversation, but like one of my, I wouldn't say complete disagreements, but I question some fundamental assumptions even with science, which says like there's like repeatability, and this is a much longer conversation, but what it boils down to is there's no such thing as objective measurement. There's always measurement by a person or from a point of view. And in fact, and this is a much deeper philosophical question, but and one of my interests in kind of Vedanta and some other stuff, there's never been a moment when anyone on this planet has ever seen anything not from their point of view, period.
Right.
So like by it's almost tautological, but you're saying like, if you saw something, you saw it from your point of view. Right.
Yep.
And so I think that one of the things I love about Nostr is that in general, I like systems that build more in tune with reality rather than trying to force a mental structure of the way we think things should be. And I think that, we need advances in technology to better allow us to match reality, but these centralized service providers, they try to build a world where there is a centralized point of view, and that's from the central banks to the social media companies. And that is not true in reality. There's never such thing as an objective point of view. It's always a subjective point of view. What I love about Nostr is there's no such thing as an objective point of view. There's only subjective points of view, right? And so in that sense, I love that Nostr honors reality and saying there's always different reality tunnels.
Interesting.
Every single reality tunnel is different, full stop. And I think it's something that everyone can agree with when they stop and think about it. And so in that sense, I am very bullish on Nostr from a truly fundamental perspective because I think it matches the reality of how existence operates. And so whatever gets built on that, whether it's social media or whatever, like I am a fan of that architecture honoring different points of view. So that's the first thing I'll say. Specifically to your question though about the social media stuff, what I noticed at least from my use of Twitter is, so there's benefit that I get from Twitter for sure. The reason I keep coming back is partially as a VC, I love finding kind of like the weirdos and the underground thinking and I found a bunch of really interesting points of view. I see what projects are trending. I synthesize that. It helps me a lot in my work. I also noticed I spend a lot of time just scrolling, and I don't like that. And one thing I did is I got rid of the Twitter app, so it's a pain in the ass. I have to log in on my phone every time to do that. What I really wanted to avoid was for the longest time, and still mostly, I only use Twitter on the desktop because I don't want to be in line and just scroll. Like when I'm in line, I'd like to be with myself in reality and not scroll. So that's more of the thing that I do. And even with Nostr, that's why I don't love having to use the iOS apps, but for the time being, as we're both a little paranoid with our insects, that's mostly what I'm doing. But so that's my bigger issue with all of that. In terms of social media experience, I don't know how you get one without the other yet. Clearly I'm still using it, so I'm getting enough value. What I will say is, while it's not exactly the same, the one social media experience that has delivered me a ton of value, it maybe doesn't give me quite as much variety, but still a lot, that has never caused me any issues with scrolling or wasting time and has purely been a net good in my life is Reddit. And Stacker News in this room as well. I would put that category. For whatever reason, I would say I've learned a tremendous amount from Reddit. I've learned a tremendous amount from Stacker News, and I've never been hooked or addicted. And I don't know why that is, but that format just works really beautifully for me.
Right. And that's a format that we spoke about. I think we had a call, was it last week we were talking just privately? And, I wonder, like, where are we? Have you seen, or do you know more about stuff that's going on in kind of the, like if subreddit were reinvented as a Nostr client, or if Stacker News were to be more, a Nostr native client, what's the current, there was a zap edit thing that I think I saw. What are the latest projects that are sort of, looking at that use case?
Well, I think that's the only one that I've seen that's live, and I haven't played that much with it yet. And obviously, I don't know all the details yet, but I know Kian is still kind of moving in that direction. He actually, though, posted a really fascinating post. I don't know if you saw this on Stacker News. I'll put it on our list. And I know this is a question that we debated a lot around Nostr and centralization. Like, is it okay to have the centralized services as long as you have right of exit? Or should you be building for a truly centralized experience? I tend to agree more on the side of it's okay if it's centralized as long as you have exit. But I also see the perspective, kind of what he lays out a little bit in this thread, which is, some of the he talks about the wheel, and the wheel then leads to the automobile, that eventually leads to the rocket, but you don't see how that happens unless you really zoom out over thousands of years. And I get his perspective on that, the really prioritizing hard the decentralization, not just having a centralized algorithm, probably isn't necessary for some of that rocket stuff. But I also think that's far in the future, and I think it's totally okay to start with centralized system and then the next iterations of experiments. But my hope and my sense is that, at some point, when he releases Outer Space, I think he's alluded to it having certain Reddit-like qualities, and,
cool.
I bet it's going to be beautiful, but speaking of Craftsman, he'll drop something beautiful, but who knows when, right?
Yeah. Well, everything we've seen from Kian is impressive. Always ahead of. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up one thing from that. I don't know if you saw this, but it was a really interesting quote from Super Testnet. And I actually thought this was worth mentioning. So I'll just read the quote. Yeah. He said, one thing I've noticed, almost all, they're talking about are there concerns about just everything being on one relay today? And Kian didn't call out, but Damus is obviously the dominant one. I'm sure there's a couple of others as well. And Super Testnet says, one thing I've noticed, almost all Nostr profiles have a display name, a picture, and a bio, and almost all of them seem to be exported exclusively on relay.damus.io. I've connected the top 5 relays on Nostr Watch, queried for metadata for random accounts, and I only get responses from relay.damus.io. No one else has that data. I have a theory about why that is. I think it's because so many people use Amethyst and Damus apps, which start off with Damus as their default relay. And the first thing they do is create a profile, so info goes on a Damus relay, on the Damus relay. Later on, they may add other relays or remove Damus, but when they created their profile, Damus was their main relay. Consequently, Damus has almost all profile data, and basically no one else does. And he talks about there's different ways to solve that, and not calling out Damus. Damus is amazing. It's just, this is testament to how good and dominant they've been. But I thought it was interesting. I had not considered that, the default, even if eventually you add a lot of relays, the default that whatever app you start with has a certain amount of specific valuable data or metadata that other relays don't have was an interesting point. I'm curious. I had never thought. I'm curious if it's something you've considered or what your reaction to that is.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that sort of like Damus, has a great client experience, which means they end up having, because it's coupled with a good default relay experience, they end up having, probably a lot of nodes. I don't think, the openness though means that anybody who builds another relay could pull those nodes. Totally. Or anybody who builds a caching layer could pull those nodes. And so I don't think, to me, it doesn't feel as problematic. And I know that's, probably kind of sacrilege, but to me, it's, I think a lot about if the thing can be done, somebody's going to do it. And so do the thing that, if the architecture is right, then it doesn't matter what kind of experimentation people do and centralizing forces kind of inject themselves, because either the architecture has antibodies against that bad behavior or it doesn't. Right. If it doesn't, we can't just ideologue our way to it. It's just not the right architecture. Now, I think it probably is the right architecture, which is why I'm kind of experiment in ways that maybe don't feel so ideological. to test the edges of the architecture. Is the architecture actually good enough? And this like wheel automobile rocket thing, like I just don't see as a real problem. And if it is a real problem, it's a real problem even if, even if like other people don't pursue it, like somebody will pursue the building the, wheel automobile rocket ship, and the people who didn't are going to be left in the dust anyway, which I don't predict is the case. I think what will happen is people will come in and build things that, are on a firm foundation of Nostr and not worry about the fact that outside of that firm foundation, things are, not as ideologically pure, but they're actually very user-centric. And, and because it's all open, like, so back to your original question, like, if the Damus relay is too big, then, like, I think it's, if it's open, if I can pull the messages down, like, why does it matter if it's too big? Somebody else can build something big that's also too big. And now they're in like fierce competition with each other. Like, is Damus relay going to charge to host the notes? Well, maybe the other guy's not going to charge, or, there's just like a kind of a open marketplace to explore. And I think we either have the right architecture to explore a bunch of stuff on there, or we don't. And, I think I was actually talking to Hodlbod, and I think he runs Coracle, and I think he specifically made the decision not to do a relay because he doesn't want to see so much coupling between clients and relays, which, like, I think is a good instinct, and he can focus on the thing that he wants to do. But also, like, if other people want to do it and want to explore those edges, I think we should explore those edges, and we shouldn't like be shy about it. We should explore it and say, like, either the architecture is right and will defend against those kinds of problems, or the architecture is just not that good for defending against those problems. I think it is good for that because, but like, I think you can paint the picture that, it's going to cause some, the internet used to be decentralized and now it's not anymore. And you could argue that same problem will occur. But I think it's really like, what are the strategic pinch points that will emerge here? And I don't think they're going to be the same as the internet, but I don't know what they're going to be. They're like, it's still kind of, that's the fun of it, right? It's unknown.
Yeah. No, look, I especially in the immediate term, I agree with you 100%. In the long run, I think it's important we have all kinds of experiments, right? And so I tend to agree. I think the Nostr architecture as is incredible. I think that the ability to export easily your identity and social graph, as long as that remains easy, that I am personally comfortable and excited to see entrepreneurs experiment with whatever centralized experiences and algorithms and whatever they want. I will say in the long run, I think it's important that we have, people that are kind of more like completely open and decentralized ethos that are experimenting with things, because that's where Nostr came from in the first place. And I think it's important that we keep thinking, beyond just the open social graph and open identity, what does continuing to push for other kinds of decentralization open up down the line? But I agree with you that right now, our biggest challenge is that we just never get relevant. And I think the best way to get relevant is to create excellent user experiences for people that help them do something they couldn't do otherwise, like accessing interesting data, content, or making money. And probably the best way to do that is to control as much of the user experience as you can from the client to the relay, so that you can build a truly seamless, fast, amazing user experience, which is, kind of what we're seeing a little bit right now with Primal, which, we talked about there. I guess we just mentioned now the funding announcement. I was stoked to obviously participate in that. And I know you've been very involved in that project too. And I think it's just one example of, you can do a lot to contribute to the openness. Like, if you use Primal, you can export your identity and social graph. They open source their code stack, which I thought was awesome last week. But, Million is taking a point of view and saying, no, we're going to have centralized, at least for today, and maybe we'll even open this up eventually as well. But search and discovery and our own caching services and whatever. And by doing all of that, we can create a user experience where when you log in, it very quickly loads and very quickly tells you how many followers you have. And for a normie, I think that's just kind of table stakes. And so I think that's really good for Nostr that we're getting those kinds of experiments too. Yeah,
agreed. I like, I know it's, kind of an experiment in a direction we haven't seen a lot of, but having those caching layers, having the discovery services actually make the experience super clean and easy. And, and maybe it onboards, tens of thousands, millions of people, because it's so much easier and because we find the thing that sort of is appealing. But I don't think, Primal ends up owning those users in the way that Twitter owns those users. I think those users are very portable and still have exit. And so, any relay is still in fierce competition with the other relays. And if part of the infrastructure of Primal is relays and this caching stuff, that also has to compete against all the other people who want to provide caching services, or they have to, drop the cost of their service to the marginal value that, just the hardware and the bandwidth costs. And so I think it's it's healthy competition, but I don't think it turns into a runaway problem. It's just, is my view. It's kind of like, it's kind of like, the antibodies in Bitcoin. Like, if Bitcoin needs you to like defend it in all these different ways, it's kind of like, then maybe it's just the wrong, like if you have to really get, buy-in from a bunch of political stuff, then maybe it's just the wrong architecture for money, right? Which I'm not arguing it is. I'm just saying that's the same kind of argument I would make, is like, it needs to be the right architecture, and then like lots of experiments, both fully decentralized and fully centralized, and people should try to attack it, and it should still be able to be resilient to that. Now, obviously, with Nostr, we're very early compared to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's, what is it now, 14?
Over a decade, yeah.
Years old, something. And Nostr is, a couple years old, but maybe like 6-9 months of like, more really substantial progress. And so it's like early, so we don't want to like attack it in every way right away. Like I get that, like having like a lot of spam bots and stuff is just kind of annoying and just slows people down to building features to try to defend against spam. So, I'm sympathetic to the idea that you want to sort of like pace out some of this stuff, and you don't want to attract a bunch of like bad actors to, kind of abuse the system early. But I think like from builders who, people want to experiment with centralized features on top of the decentralized, protocol, I think are, more healthy than hurting the ecosystem.
Yeah. Fully co-sign. I think Nostr is the right architecture. And if it's not, then better to find that out, right? And so I'm with you, like, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Let's see what works. Yeah. Some of that should be centralized.
And another point on the kind of like, Threads is good for Nostr, Threads is good for decentralization. It also, if Threads goes the Fediverse route, and maybe there isn't a good bridge to Nostr, that may cause Twitter to figure out, actually, let's try a different experiment in a different direction.
Yeah.
And, that seems like a good experiment for, Twitter to try a Nostr experiment, which I think Jack has been pushing Elon on that for a while to be a client of Nostr.
Multiple people. I can confirm from a lot of different angles that has been pushed with Elon and his crew. So yeah, that, as he says, the most entertaining outcome usually happens, right? That would be entertaining.
Right.
Now, it would also be funny. I'm curious. Like, I have no idea how much, Zuckerberg is like really committed to open and stuff. Now, I will say he's created quite a like 180 shift in perception of him, open sourcing all the models from the AI stuff. I think that's probably more a result of just like the logic of where his business falls, and like the economics of it. But who knows? Like, for all I know, the dude's had multiple kids. Maybe he's just like, okay, actually, I want to like contribute more to society or something. I don't know, right? Like, give him every benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
But one thing that would be wild. So one of the special features, and again, I think eventually the special thing with Nostr is all the data mashup, all the ecosystem, many kinds of apps, not just data. But in the short term, one of the beautiful things we have in Nostr, even with the DOMS clampdown, is, for Android and web users, we still have zaps. And zaps are very powerful. Now, what would be interesting to me is like, Threads is cool, but like, even if people like Threads, like, we still can't make money directly on it. What would be fascinating to me, and I bet one of them is going to do it, and I wonder, is it going to be Elon or Zuck first? I would have bet Elon heavily a year ago, but now who knows? One of them is going to realize, oh, wait a second, we can integrate open payments that allow anyone in the world to access it with Lightning. Put Nostr aside for a second. If that happens, like then all of a sudden, I actually think, at least short term, that would set Nostr adoption back a little bit because one of our killer features is now adopted by them. But it would also take Bitcoin and just like absolutely, dramatically increase adoption. And Zuck is interesting because, he had David Marcus is leading all of his efforts around Libra and, their own sort of centralized token. That obviously didn't work out. David Marcus is now obviously, all in on the Lightning Network with Lightspark. What if, it could still be Elon. I mean, he and his crew, a lot of people are screwing into Bitcoin Lightning. But what if Zuck's like, actually, no, the next thing for Threads is we're integrating Lightning.
Yeah. Well, that would be an exciting future. I think, I don't know if I'll estimate. I mean, I think, when people think they have a hand, they try to play it.
Right.
And I think with Facebook and Messenger and payments, they thought they had a hand. So they kind of tried to do the Libra kind of power grab. And I think, anybody who really follows Bitcoin understands that that's not going to work. Like, you don't need yet another, decider on kind of money. But I do think there's those experiments have been tried. They haven't worked out. Maybe a new experiment would be more appealing. And whether that's with Threads or Twitter, I think it's, again, an example of having two players who have to compete to try to innovate is much better than having one. Like, it's 10 times better, 100 times better. It's not just like twice as good, because having one is very slow and plodding, and there's no real forcing function to try new things or to innovate in ways that are more open. But I think when you have look, I think you could argue Twitter. Did you see I think Cloudflare stats on twitter.com? There's I think it was was it Cloudflare? I don't know. Somebody who had some credible stats around the web usage, and that's just kind of fallen off a cliff.
Really?
The usage of Twitter, yeah.
I'm surprised by that. I mean, I'm obviously still addicted, so
I think it was. I want to say Cloudflare, but this may be confounded by other factors. So I don't mean to say that's the truth, but that was at least something I've been aware of. Being shared, or an idea that people are pushing. But, I think Twitter they must be feeling pain today from Threads, whether Threads is durable or whatever, but getting, basically the core use case of the thing, having a competitor go from 0 to 100 million users in a week, that has to create some pain. And if you're in pain, you have to make decisions to how do you strategically bob and weave to be relevant, or to be, useful, or to be, sort of appeal to a different use case or a different group. And I think that, I think that Twitter is in that, similar to how Facebook Meta is open about AI stuff because they're not the leader. Exactly. The leaders are Google and OpenAI and Microsoft and, maybe an Anthropic with Claude 2 that just came out. Those are the leaders, and Facebook's playing catch up. And so the strategy when you're playing catch up is don't just do the same thing that, number 1, 2, and 3 are doing, but take a radically different position where it's hey, we're going to open everything. We're going to commoditize everything that you do and just give it away for free. And we're going to win because we're going to do other stuff that doesn't need that thing to make money. We're going to build other tools, other services. So I think it's generally good. So maybe the Twitter playing catch up to Threads position is really look, we're not going to build our own currency. That's been tried. That's kind of dumb. It doesn't work. But maybe we do a Lightning integration, or maybe we do a Nostr integration, or we're playing catch up. We want to be relevant again. How do we be relevant in the way that we used to be? We used to be the king. Now we're not the king. How do we do that? So I think it's good. I like seeing that kind of competitive force in the market, because it means everybody has to sort of up their game, and everybody has to scramble to find new ways to serve people's needs. And I suspect that some of those needs are, going to be more visible as, more open ways serve people better, which is
Ladies
kind of the core.
And gentlemen, you heard it here first. DK with the crystal ball. Elon, if you happen to be listening to this, plug into Nostr. You get access to all this open data. You plug into Lightning, open payments. All of a sudden, whereas Zuck is marketing decentralization. You have a truly open environment, and actually, like, you pick the right architecture. So it'd be interesting.
Did I see right? Did Elon announce a like new AI initiative, like X.AI? Is that?
Yes, and I haven't read much about it. It seems like he's got some smart people, but the only thing that caught my attention was the goal of the organization was to understand the universe. So.
Okay. I mean, that's a good goal.
I like it.
but I mean, like, OpenAI was sort of started by him with the intention of being open, and I think it's gotten very closed over time. So I think this is like a pushback or return to the original vision. And so if you actually can build a more open version of AI services, that's probably net benefit for humanity, and actually net benefit for maybe some of the, if OpenAI, maybe you have actually some of these tools like the 402s, Lightning, the LN402, and some of the sort of APIs wrapped would be more possible in this kind of world.
Totally. Yeah, I love it. So. Maybe a few more just last Nostr things I want to toss out, and then I did want to get one more AI question out there. In fact, fuck it. Let's just go with the AI question real quick.
Is this turning into like an AI podcast?
I know. The thing I wanted to ask you while we're on that is, you pulled up for me. I'm going to pull it up right now. This guy who I was not familiar with, but I read a bit more about him, Chris Pike.
Yeah. Yep. Pike,
and he basically put out two different ideas I thought were pretty interesting, and both were very related. And you tagged me in this, and so I wanted to get your take on this. I'm going to read his claims. One, these are like his kind of investing theses that he was throwing out there. One, local open source AI inference. I believe local open source AI inference will beat out cloud closed source inference driven by the capabilities of Apple silicon and price elasticity. It has to be free as in beer. Distribution and discovery are critical. He followed that up with a tweet that says webGPU broadly. I think webGPU could power decentralized local inference via BitTorrent-like architecture, specifically non-crypto, and also represent the future of gaming. I read a bit more about webGPU. I think it's Google released, I believe, and basically makes it easier for a browser to access the GPU within your computer, which potentially could have implications for, doing inferences and offering that up via web API, is my understanding. What are your takes on his two takes? Do you agree with him that local inference is going to end up being way cheaper because of Apple silicon and competition? Is this webGPU thing a big deal? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't claim a lot of expertise here, but from the people that I've talked to who I think are kind of more knowledgeable about this, I think we have to see if we're going to move from the kind of cloud-based, like, does the infinite everything large language model really, really matter? And is that really, really differentiated just by like scale? Or is the kind of like fine-tuned, distilled, locally run edge AI good enough if you sort of have, maybe it's high quality documents that you train on, or maybe it's just like vertical specific data sets. And if you do that, then like the webGPU and Apple silicon stuff starts to be like a reasonable way to do that. So it's like, if you need really large, infrastructure, probably if that's the winning formula, like that's sort of well experimented. I don't think we can make strong claims that the winning formula is definitely edge and open source. I hope it is. I think there's reasons to be optimistic, smaller, more focused. I think there's reason to be optimistic, but this is kind of like real time, the kind of experimentation and learning that's going on right now. Until we have the answer to that, I don't think we can make strong claims about, this is definitely going to be the path that wins. As much as I hope it is. Yeah.
What do you think specifically? So agree with all you're saying there. I think, implicit in that is also just this idea that like Apple chips are just getting better and better. And, that's impressive as well. Yep. And maybe, more and more people can just run. You don't even need a gaming computer anymore. You can just do it from your MacBook Pro, which a lot of people have those. That's pretty interesting. This webGPU thing, though, I didn't fully understand. I'm curious, what was your take on this? I think webGPU could power decentralized local inference via Bitcoin-like architecture, specifically non-crypto. And I'm guessing, he's not yet familiar with Lightning or doesn't know a lot about that. So when I hear the BitTorrent thing, I'm like, okay, this will probably be done with Lightning, but maybe not. what is your read on what he means there? That basically a lot of different people are able to link their GPUs together to do decentralized cloud inference?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I saw it and it seemed to touch on a bunch of themes that I know we've talked about and are interested in. You know, the specifics of like, you know, how BitTorrent like and how do the GPUs get serviced. I think webGPU is an easy way for, you know, the hardware to get surfaced in a website, but I don't know that it means, you know, I don't know all of the implications. Like, can you have it always running and what's the power compared to like doing it in, you know, in a data center with a specialized GPU? Well, you know, I just don't have a good sense of the trade-offs there, but I think one would need to understand those trade-offs better before you could kind of properly analyze this. But I think like the ideas that he's talking about, a BitTorrent like Bitcoin based, you know, GPU based thing is very consistent with this idea of like, how do you let people, you know, donate or kind of contribute compute capacities to workloads to get paid via Bitcoin. So it feels like it's in that same flavor of things, but I don't think Chris is suggesting here's the answer. Right. I have the answer. It's more like these themes seem like they should work together and like, let's, you know, experiment and see.
Totally. And I think they're very well aligned with the sort of Bitcoin Lightning and Nostr ethos. And so I'll reiterate, as I've said on podcasts before, you know, I put out that paper or essay a few weeks ago, hivemind.vc/AI for anyone that wants to read it.
Yep.
But like one of the big things I was calling for there was a marketplace for GPUs. And I think this is like one kind of way on that market. I mean, and I get why, you know, a lot of people, when they say BitTorrent, like non-crypto, I think crypto is obviously getting a very bad name right now, but if you think Bitcoin is just energy and like no one's trying to scale it, I think that's probably the best way to do proof of work in the future or whatever. But I'm now interested to see kind of two different types of marketplaces. One is just generally like a marketplace for compute, like straight up, you know, here's my access to my web GPU API, use it for whatever the hell you want. Although I imagine that could also have some malware implications. There's probably some safety to it. And then the other is just this marketplace for agents, which is to say like, okay, it's not a generalized compute that I'm offering up, but like just like we talked about earlier, like a long tail of, you know, hundreds of thousands and eventually millions, and eventually billions and trillions maybe one day, of very hyper specialized models that have some special mode based on their data that you have or whatever, some skill you have. So I'm going to re-put that out in the universe for anyone listening right now. I'm extremely interested in exploring and funding potentially both of those ideas. One, like sort of generalized compute marketplace, Nostr and Lightning base, and then agent Nostr Lightning base marketplace. Right.
And do you think is the thing kind of build it and prototype with things, or how do you imagine? Do you have like a use case that you'd want to go after and sort of build technology to serve a specific use case, or do you kind of want to prototype on the build of what each of those might look like and kind of do an exploratory process to discover what can be done with it?
I don't have the answer to that. I mean, my general take is, I want to see a lot of different people experiment because I don't know, like it could be something I'm just not familiar with that really makes it pop. For example, some kind of like gaming use case or something, which I'm not the right person to see that because I'm not really a gamer. But I mean, that's why I like these kinds of hackathons and I want to see a lot more of these happen. But the ideas that make a ton of sense to me today are, you know, you either help someone get paid that can't get paid or offer a service that can't be offered otherwise. So the things that make a lot of sense to me are, you know, offering up specialized models or compute that people can access that otherwise couldn't access Open API or OpenAI's API. One example would be, you know, and I think eventually you're going to need to connect the infrastructure from just taking sats to local normal apps that speak Bitcoin Lightning, right? So as an example, most people don't realize they can use sats, but if you're like, hey, you know, you want to access this service, use it with Cash App, or if you're, you know, in Latin America, use it with IBEX, or if you're in offering people the ability to quickly experiment with monetizing some data or service they already have. And my bias here is just like shit fast, see what sticks. I think Pablo is by far in the best position for this because he solved a real problem for him. He wants to offer podcast transcriptions. The best way to do that, at least today, is with whisper models. who's going to do the best job of running Whisper models and giving you accurate data for the best cost? We don't know. That's what the free market decide. And so I think that is a great example. And I would be, and one general meta point there that I'll make that I love about the way Pablo is approaching this is it's not just like, and this is why I'm probably, in a better position having fun as a VC than an entrepreneur. It's one thing to speculate about this stuff, and it's quite fun. I like doing it. But what I like about what he's doing is it's not theoretical. It's like, I want to solve a problem, which is how do I get the cheapest, best quality podcast transcription possible? Okay, cool. Let's build a marketplace.
Yep.
And then you expand out. That's not the only thing people will need. So I don't know what he'll need next for a service, but maybe it's, okay, now I want to have a service that, you're going to do the best job possible to blast this to the largest number of normal users or something like that. There's a service, that makes sure it gets on all the relays, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Real problems, like real, tangible, measurable things is what I would recommend people try.
Right. In that example with Pablo, he's building the marketplace for that? Is he building is he supplying? so is he actually has a compute resource that's going to supply Whisper transcriptions?
It's already live as a demo.
Oh, that is. So how do you use it?
I don't know if he shipped to the public because I tried today and I couldn't, but he shows a video of it. So I actually think in the video he has 3 different models running. I think he's running all 3 of them. It may just be in a demo. Maybe I got fooled by vaporware. But I think in our conversation a week or so ago, he told me that when he explained this to an AI researcher that was on Nostr, well, it blew their mind. And they also hosted Whisper.
Oh, cool.
Tried it. So don't quote me on this. And Pablo, if you're listening, maybe you could correct us. But I think both he and at least one other person have competed to offer that service.
Nice. I love it. So it's I think that's great. It's so simple and focused, and he's patient 0 on the supply side and maybe already getting patient number 1 to sort of compete on supply.
Yeah.
So, and then, just let's get the demand apps and the examples of sort of, actually, can we use it to do some of the stuff that, I guess we don't have that many.
We should get a podcast a transcript of our podcast.
Yeah. So how do we do it? We upload it to...
Well, again, I couldn't get it to work today. So Pablo, I don't know if that was just demo, but let's hit
it might just afterwards. Be the demo. Yeah. We'll hit them up and figure it out. Yeah.
I'm happy to contribute 1,000 sats. Let's go.
Nice.
Or 950 to the undercutter.
Nice. Cool. And then I'm looking, I know we've got a few other things coming up a little bit later. So, you want to wrap any other kind of final thoughts or things that we should be? Yeah,
just a couple just quick announcements I wanted to put out there because I thought they're worth mentioning. Pull them up. Just some other things this week. So we talked about Zapple Pay, Primal's launch. I think just a couple other launches I want to mention. Mutiny, their new browser extension. I believe it's a browser extension. I haven't played with it yet. It came out today. I understand it to be something kind of like a non-custodial Albi type thing, which I think is pretty interesting. And I know they've been really pushing hard. I think it's one of the first projects to use LDK as well, just blocks implementation later. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, great.
Haven't used it, so I can't comment on it, but I think very highly of the builders there. It's Ben and Tony and Paul. And anyways, I'm excited to use it. It looks cool. And I appreciate, I'm not at all convinced, to be clear, that non-custodial is ever going to be better than custodial in terms of user experience. But I hope it is. And I think it's awesome that there are people that are that committed that are going to try and make that the case. So let's see. And that's awesome. So I want to mention that. I want to mention Arcade is doing some really cool experiments. And if you check out, they just launched a day or 2 ago, AI chat within their chat app. Right now, the newest version of the Arcade app, which is in beta for people that want to test it and get feedback, they're looking for feedback. It's really cool because you can do, sort of Telegram style chat. And there's some debate with them and other people over if that's the right standard, but it's an experiment, which I like. And one of the chat channels they're experimenting with this as a marketplace. I think the idea is, for something like a local Bitcoins that, most of the actual Bitcoin trade, the insight they had, which is pretty interesting, is that, even something like packs for local Bitcoins, by their estimations, were still a very small percent, like 1% or less of the actual peer-to-peer trading that was happening. But the vast majority of the peer-to-peer trading was on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. So this is kind of taking that insight and saying, okay, can we build a messenger and then build that marketplace on top there? So that's a very cool experiment. And now they're doing this experiment where another chat you can have is with your AI assistant, which I think is pretty cool. So anyway, so I just...
And how do you use that? Is it at a website or an app that we can download? Or
yeah, you can download it. I'll send you the link, but I think, or if you just go to, Arcade's Twitter profile, I'm sure it's on there in Nostr as well. But yeah, they publish a link to the test flight. The AI thing, when I downloaded last night, I saw Chris demo it. Maybe it's released in the latest version because I couldn't get that to work yet. But the general kind of water cooler chat and the ability to create your own channels are there. So I like that they're, like some of these other guys, like Pablo, like they're really pushing the envelope of what's new and possible, which I love.
Yep.
And then two others I just want to call. I just saw this morning, Jeff launched ostrich.work, which is cool. He calls it the first and best Nostr job board on the internet. So I like that.
This is Jeff G.
Yeah. Nice. And you're already seeing, actually, damn, good for him. Even since this morning, Pablo's posted a job.
This is ostrich.work?
Yeah, ostrich.org. This is sick. Go, Jeff. Stelios from Geyser has posted at least I think he posted it twice, but a front-end engineer posting. For those, I've mentioned this to you, I may be doing some hiring at my fund at some point for like a chief of staff type of role, so maybe I'll put that up there. Wow. Good for him. He's already, like, this morning there were 0, and now there's like 4 or 5, so that's cool.
Nice.
And again, I love seeing people pushing it. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention, because I think what they're doing is just so dope, is congrats to Gigi and the whole group over at Opensats. They released their huge first wave of Nostr grants, and it's just a lot of the best builders in there. And yeah, it's so cool. That
do you have that list up? I do. I saw the list when it happened. You want to call off a few names or shout out?
NDK by Pablo, because Pablo does everything. Abla by Verbricha. Coracle by Huddlebod. Iris by Malmi, Damus by GB55, Rust Nostr, Nostr SDK, Yuki BTC, Nostr Relay, Nest.js, Cody Singh, I don't know him, Soapbox, Alex Felici, that we just talked about, Code Collaboration over Nostr, I guess that's the GitHub idea, kind of, Dan Conway dev, don't know him, Satellite, which is one I haven't played with a lot yet, but I've heard great things about, Lobtide, Amethyst by Vitor, Pinster, which is kind of like Pinterest, I believe, Sepher Safari, Nostr.build by Nostr.build, Gossip by Mike Dilger, or however you say his last name, Nostr SDK iOS, Brian Montz, and Nostr Design by Carnage. So that's just awesome. Like, kudos to Jack, kudos to that whole team. Like, just, like, honestly, that's like just an incredible public good. Yeah, I think that should be applauded all the way around.
Yep, 100%. And it's great that I think these are all names that we've seen for a long time, the sort of like long-time contributors to Nostr and to NIPS and weighing in on NIPS and building applications and stuff, before the grant money showed up. So they sort of like, they didn't wait. They just like moved on it as a great entrepreneur does. And then sort of the money and kind of the funding to help kind of make it more sustainable or to give them a longer, longer runway to run these experiments and maybe even get some more resources together are now possible. So it's a good, great list of people, great roster, and love to see kind of just more space for these great people to be innovating.
Congrats to you all, and honestly, it makes me a lot more bullish on Nostr too, because like obviously we've got a long way to go. We have an incredible architecture. We have a great start. We have a solid user base to get started. We have a long way to go, and just knowing that these people who are so committed are going to be able to keep developing for 1-2+ years, like a lot's going to get built in that time. So it makes me a lot more bullish on the ecosystem. And yeah, I'm stoked.
Awesome.
What about you, DK? Anything else last minute you wanted to mention?
Last minute. What else? Oh, I've been playing. This might be an interesting kind of product that would work with the LN402 idea, but I've been playing with a bunch of different tools to take these long form videos and to chop them up into shorter form.
Cool.
And there's some good work. I've actually been working with a few people on manually doing it and then a few automated systems. And it feels like there's a ton to explore there. And, there's a ton of innovation, ton of different approaches. But I've found that is, that's something that I'm like, it's so easy to make long form and then it's so hard to cut to short. And it's an obvious place where AI could, be part of the solution. It's an obvious place where, there's direct payment in all those cases. So there's like an obvious kind of value exchange. So it feels like it touches on a lot of these themes. Though I haven't seen any kind of Nostr specific thing, or actually, I did see. You know, what's interesting? I did see Podcast GPT, which have you seen this? It takes you give it like one of your favorite podcasts, and you say, create a new podcast for me that has the best clips of podcast X. And so it kind of reclips it and turns it into a new podcast for the consumer to kind of do. And it feels to me like this would be nice as a creator tool too, and probably has more direct kind of monetization payment opportunities there. So that's another area that I have been spending some time in, just because I spend a lot of time in video and playing around with new tools these days.
I think that's awesome. By the way, I mean, you know, we talked about what's going to be the next use case. Pablo, you just heard your second customer right there, and I do think it's really. It is
nice. A form of highlighting, actually. It's not a bad point. Yeah, I hadn't really connected it so directly, but it is really another form of highlighting. Take long form and highlight to the short form.
And what it really reminds me of, and I think where all this marries so beautifully, and I like that, again, it's focused on very specific niche around podcasts, right? Like, we already have podcasts in 2.0 and lightning payments there. That's kind of, you know, Oscar from Fountain Others are, you know, pushing that more towards Nostr as well. And yeah, I think that, you know, you've got companies like Albi, they're very focused on podcasting 2.0 and providing payments there. I think it's just, you've got so much momentum on that front already. You've got people like you, the Oranges. I think it makes, I could totally see a whole marketplace of podcaster services, from, you know, doing the clipping, you know, doing the transcriptions, maybe marketing it one day. Like, I think it's like a nice, like, full stack of services that perhaps Pablo or someone can expand into.
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool.
So good. All right. With that, shall we wrap?
That's a wrap.